On May 18, 1987, the Halloway family vanished from their brand-new home on Cassia Drive, a freshly paved cul-de-sac on the edge of Mesa, Arizona. Dinner on the table, car in the driveway, no signs of a struggle. They were there one evening, and gone by morning. For 36 years, the house stood empty, its windows papered over, its lawn turning to dust. Then, 2 months ago, a real estate drone captured something impossible inside the living room: movement. A single figure, standing perfectly still in the corner, facing the wall as if listening to it. What we're about to explore isn't fiction. It's what happens when time forgets a family, but the house remembers. If you believe homes can hold their own memories, subscribe for more stories like the house on Cassia Drive. The neighborhood had been built on promise. Sun-drenched stucco walls, decorative rock gardens, the kind of symmetry developers sell as permanence. But Cassia Drive never felt right. Even in 1987, when the asphalt was new and the saplings along the sidewalk hadn't yet grown their first leaves, neighbors whispered that something about number 41 looked off. Too still, too staged. When the Halloways moved in, they fit the brochure. Grant and Diane, both in their 30s, smiling. 2 kids, Jacob, 9, and Lily, 6. A dog named Pepper. They'd been in the house 8 months before the night everything stopped. Police found dinner half-eaten, a rotary phone left off the hook, the garage door half open. Pepper had clawed at the inside of the door until her paws bled. No one was ever found. The developer quietly resold the home twice in the 90s. Both buyers backed out within weeks. By 2002, Cassia Drive had become a ghost tract. Lawns of dust, for sale signs bleached white by the desert sun. Now, in 2023, the house was back on the market again. And that's when Mara Ellison, a freelance documentarian known for her small but dedicated YouTube channel Unsolved Dust, saw the listing. The photographs were sterile, staged, almost too clean, except for one. The living room shot. In the far corner near the fireplace, the wallpaper bulged slightly, as if the wall itself were breathing. She thought it was a compression artifact. She zoomed in. There was a shadow inside the wall, a silhouette with its face turned toward the plaster. Mara didn't scroll past. She booked a flight. The footage began with a smooth aerial sweep of Cassia Drive, the drone's shadow gliding over a curve of beige rooftops. The operator, a 22-year-old real estate intern, had uploaded the file to a stock site. It should have been nothing special. Except at the 32-second mark, the drone drifted toward the front window of 41 Cassia. The curtains fluttered slightly, though there was no wind. When Mara froze the frame, she saw it clearly. Someone, or something, was standing inside, facing the corner where the wall met the ceiling. She watched that frame over and over as her laptop fan whined under the Arizona heat. There was a sense of déjà vu, that eerie familiarity only crime reporters and night owls recognize, where the world slows down to a single, impossible image. Her viewers knew her for the slow burn cases, the missing hikers, the unsent letters, the towns that pretended nothing happened. This felt like that. Small, quiet, real. She reached for her recorder. Entry log 1, Cassia Drive, preliminary review, the Halloway case. Family of 4 disappeared May 18, 1987. Official cause, unknown. The house has been unoccupied for 21 years. Not condemned, but never sold. I'm requesting access to shoot interiors. The listing agent is hesitant. She closed the laptop and stared out of her hotel window. Mesa looked washed out under the evening light. Chain restaurants, half-built lots, palms that shivered in the dry wind. Her phone buzzed. A voicemail from Agent Roy Lasker, retired Mesa PD, the only officer still alive who'd worked the original case. Miss Ellison, you're poking at old bones. Cassia Drive was never meant to be reopened. But if you're serious, meet me at the diner off Warner and 8th. Bring your own recorder. I'll tell you why that house was never torn down. It was late afternoon when Mara met him. The diner was empty except for a waitress and the hum of fluorescent lights. Lasker looked exactly as she'd imagined. Tall, grizzled, a face cut by the desert sun. He stirred his coffee without looking up. "People still talking about that place?" "Talking, no," she said. "Forgetting, yes." He gave a bitter smile. "Good line. You're one of those podcast types? Documentary. I do my own filming." He nodded once, then leaned closer. "You'll think it's the usual. Carbon monoxide, runaway theory, abduction. But it wasn't that simple. We found something in the walls." She frowned. "Like evidence?" "Like a room. One we didn't build." He slid a folded photograph across the table. Black and white, dated May 20th, 1987. It showed 2 officers in the Halloway living room, kneeling beside what looked like a split in the wallpaper. "The contractor swore every unit had the same layout," he said, "except this one." There was a hollow space behind the wall. No door, no plans, just void. We tried to open it. Nails bent. Tools broke. After that, the department sealed it up. Officially, we logged it as inaccessible structure. Mara studied the photo. The wallpaper pattern was faint but recognizable, identical to the one in the real estate images. The same wall, the same spot where the shadow had stood. "What happened to the Halloways?" she asked. He looked out the window. They didn't leave. They just went where the house told them to. That night, she returned to her hotel and replayed the meeting on her recorder. Lasker's voice crackled through static. The sentence replayed again and again. They went where the house told them to. She uploaded the photo to her drive and began digging through Mesa's building archives. At 11:47 p.m., she found something strange. The development company that built Cassia Drive, Suncrest Homes, had filed blueprints for 32 identical houses, but number 41's file was missing. In its place, a scanned letter from 1986. Permit withdrawn due to structural inconsistency in lot foundation. Inspection postponed indefinitely. No follow-up, no re-inspection, just a stamp that read void. Mara felt the familiar electric pull that comes before a discovery, part excitement, part dread. She minimized the file and stared at her own reflection in the dark laptop screen. "Entry log 2, she whispered. "Something's wrong with the blueprints. The house wasn't built the same as the others. And someone, either in the department or the developer, made sure no one ever reopened that permit. Whatever's inside 41 Cassia Drive was never meant to exist." She paused the recorder. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavy. Outside her window, the desert was still. Then, faintly, through the motel wall, she heard it. A rhythmic tapping, metallic and patient. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats again. She froze. The sound was coming from inside the vent. Morning came with that washed-out Arizona light that makes every surface look bleached. Mara didn't sleep. She'd stayed half awake, waiting for the metallic tapping to start again. It never did. She packed her camera, recorder, and a bottle of water, then drove toward Cassia Drive. The subdivision looked identical to the photographs. Cracked sidewalks, yellow grass, mailboxes leaning at odd angles. A dog barked somewhere down the block, but no one answered. Number 41 sat at the curve of the cul-de-sac, a flat-roofed single story with sun-peeled paint. The for sale sign out front was so new it looked wrong. White plastic among ruin. The listing agent was already there, waiting on the porch. She introduced herself as Nadia Loring, 30-something tan, composed, the kind of person who could sell a burial ground with a smile. Her keychain jingled with nervousness. "You're the documentarian," she said, unlocking the door. "The bank said you'd need interior footage. Just remember, everything's as is. I'm only authorized to show understood," Mara said, raising her small camera. "I just need atmosphere shots." Nadia laughed once, quick and brittle. "You'll get atmosphere, all right." Inside, the air felt preserved, stale and cool, despite the heat outside. Plastic sheets covered the counters. A thin layer of dust coated the floor except for a faint trail of footprints that led down the hall. "Contractors," Nadia said quickly. "We had to inspect the wiring. Place has old bones." Mara crouched, snapping a photo of the prints. They were small, maybe size 6, bare. "Do your contractors usually work without shoes?" Nadia blinked, color rising in her cheeks. "It's an old house, Miss Ellison." Dust gets everywhere. They moved room to room. The living area looked normal at first glance. Beige carpet, outdated fixtures. Until Mara reached the wall. The wallpaper pattern was exactly like the photo Lasker had shown her. Faded yellow diamonds. At its center, the surface bulged outward, just enough to catch the light differently. Mara raised her hand and pressed gently. The wall gave beneath her palm, soft, almost elastic, then firmed again. Nadia flinched. "Please don't touch that." "Why not?" "There's insulation damage. We're scheduled to patch it." Mara lowered her camera and met her eyes. "You know what happened here, don't you?" Nadia's expression flattened. "Everyone in Mesa knows the story. Family disappears, house sits empty. The bank tried to tear it down twice. Each time, equipment failed. Bulldozer caught fire once she forced a laugh. Maybe just bad luck. Or something built wrong." Nadia's keys trembled slightly in her hand. "Whatever's wrong here, it's above my pay grade." She moved toward the kitchen, talking fast about square footage. But Mara stayed, staring at that soft, bulged wall. She thought of Lasker's words. "We found a room we didn't build." Something about it pulsed faintly when the light shifted, like a slow heartbeat beneath plaster. After Nadia left, Mara lingered outside, pretending to shoot B-roll of the street. When the agent's car finally turned the corner, she slipped back inside through the half-latched door. The stillness hit harder without company. The air hummed, a low electrical vibration that made her teeth ache. She kept the camera rolling, whispering into the mic. Entry log 3. Unauthorized entry, 41 Cassia. Time, 1:14 p.m. Objective, document structural anomaly. Visual distortion on south wall confirmed. She approached the wall again, tracing the edge where wallpaper met baseboard. Dust had gathered in strange circular patterns, as if air leaked through unseen seams. She knelt, shined her flashlight along the molding, and froze. There was a hairline crack just wide enough to glimpse darkness beyond. Not insulation, not studs. Empty space. A faint breeze exhaled from it, cool, metallic, carrying a smell like old copper and something sweeter beneath, almost organic. She brought the recorder close. There's airflow from behind the wall. Possible cavity. No vent visible. Smell consistent with rust or... She hesitated, sniffed again. Maybe blood. Her phone vibrated, jolting her upright. Unknown number. "Mara Ellison." The voice was male, older. "Yes, this is Dennis Halloway." Her mind blanked. "You're..." "My brother was Grant Halloway. The one who disappeared. I saw your post online, the drone clip. You shouldn't be in that house." Mara looked around instinctively, heart thudding. "Do you know what happened here, Mr. Halloway?" A pause, static on the line. "I know what they found when they sealed it." My brother's handwriting. On the inside of the dry wall? Her mouth went dry. "Inside?" "They tore part of the kitchen wall back then. Found words scrawled between the studs. 'Not ours. Don't look.' That's all. Police said prank. But I saw the handwriting. It was his, 'Why didn't you tell anyone?' They wouldn't listen. and I didn't want that place reopened. He inhaled sharply. Do yourself a favor. Leave before dark. The line clicked dead. Mara stood alone in the hollow house, phone pressed to her ear long after the call ended. Through the cracked wall, the faint draft brushed against her wrist again, cooler now. She turned off the camera and backed toward the door. Outside, heat swallowed her, dry and blinding. She climbed into her car, hands shaking. She replayed the call once, then saved it to her cloud drive. Lasker's warning. Dennis Halloway's voice. The soft wall. Back at her motel, she downloaded the footage. At the 2-minute mark, something flickered behind her on the wall. A brief distortion, like a shadow moving under plastic. She zoomed frame by frame. At first, it looked like light glare, but then she saw it. A small handprint pressing out from inside, fingers thin and pale, stretching the wallpaper outward for half a second before vanishing. Mara stopped the playback. Her reflection stared back from the laptop screen, eyes wide, unblinking. In the reflection, behind her shoulder, the motel vent grill quivered once. 3 slow taps. The next morning, the desert sky looked drained of color, faded silver above the heat haze. Mara drove east toward Apache Junction, following the address Dennis Halloway had texted after their midnight call. It led to a small trailer park pressed against the Superstition Mountains, a scatter of aluminum shells glinting under sun. Dennis waited outside Lot 12, thin, leathery, early 60s, the kind of man carved by dry wind and regret. He stubbed out a cigarette as she parked. You came, he said, squinting. You called. He gave a humorless smile. Yeah, guess I did inside. The trailer smelled of dust and burnt coffee. Every surface was cluttered. Old maps, VHS tapes, yellowed newspaper clippings, and a corkboard crowded with thumbtacked faces. The Halloways. 1987. A family frozen mid-smile. Mara's camera stayed in her bag. She wanted the story, but she wanted the truth more. Dennis poured stale coffee into chipped mugs. You're the first person to ask about them in 15 years. Not even cops come by anymore. What do you remember from that week? He rubbed his forehead. Grant called me 3 days before they vanished. Said the house hummed at night. Thought it was pipes or power lines. He recorded it. Played me a clip over the phone. Low tone, steady, almost like breathing. Then the call cut. You still have the recording? He nodded toward a cassette deck on the counter. Haven't played it in decades. Power cords shot. Mara dug in her gear bag. I've got an adapter. The tape hissed to life after a few seconds. Soft static, then a deep, rhythmic vibration. 4 seconds of silence, another pulse, faintly organic. Then Grant Halloway's voice, distant, whispering. It's in the walls, Di. It's under the paint. Dennis shut the player off, hands shaking. That's the last I ever heard him. Mara sat back, heart thrumming. The police had this? They did. Said it was tape damage, feedback. Lasker believed me, but the department told him to drop it. Why? He shrugged. Suncrest Homes, big money. They built half this valley. The company folded in 1989, but their records never went public. Mara jotted notes. Do you know who designed 41 Cassia? Architect named Elliot Kane, local legend for a while. Built model homes fast. Cheap concrete, recycled wiring. Disappeared himself in '88. She looked up. You're saying the builder vanished too? Poetic, huh? He forced a laugh that broke halfway. Thing is, people said Kane tested new soundproofing in those houses. Polyurethane panels, double insulated. But after the Halloways went missing, he stopped taking contracts one night his truck was found on the Salt River Bridge. Door open. No body. Mara felt the heat pressing through the thin trailer walls. So, 2 vanishings tied to the same address. Dennis leaned forward, eyes hard. You think ghosts did it? No, someone did. Someone with keys and blueprints. I think something was hidden there, she said quietly. And maybe it wasn't just your family. He looked away, jaw working. You're making a film? An investigation. But I won't air anything without your consent. Good. He reached into a drawer and slid out an envelope. Take this. Found it in a storage box after Mom died. Inside were 5 Polaroids, faded almost to sepia. Each showed the Halloway living room from the same angle: sofa, fireplace, wall. But in the 5th photo, the wallpaper pattern was wrong. The diamonds twisted inward, forming a spiral that seemed to pull light toward its center. Grant took those, Dennis said. Said the pattern changed between mornings. Mara traced the spiral with her thumb. The print felt slightly sticky, like glue that never dried. Mr. Halloway, she said, can I scan these? Keep them. I don't want them here. He walked her to the door, stopping just short of sunlight. You ever notice that every story about that house ends the same way? Somebody leaves, but the house stays. That's the real haunting. She nodded slowly. As she turned to go, he added, if you go back there, bring salt. My brother used to sprinkle it along the baseboards, said it kept the walls quiet. On the drive back, Mara replayed the tape through her car speakers. Beneath the steady pulse, she caught a faint new sound she hadn't noticed before. A child's voice, counting under breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then silence. She pulled over on the shoulder, heart pounding, rewound, listened again. The voice was there, right before the recording cut off. She checked the timestamp burned into the tape label. May 17th, 1987, 11:58 p.m. The family vanished less than an hour later. She sat for a long time, the desert wind rattling the car windows. Then she hit record on her pocket mic. Entry log 4. Interview with Dennis Halloway confirms builder connection, Elliot Kane. Audio recovered, unknown child voice, possibly Lily Halloway. Counting seconds before disappearance, spiral distortion visible in final Polaroid. Hypothesis. Structural anomaly may involve acoustic resonance, walls responding to frequency. Next step. Locate architect's files, rumor of prototype materials stored in Suncrest Warehouse, West Mesa. Will verify. She stopped the recording, started the car, and drove toward the sinking sun. The tape still hissed softly in the deck. Back at the motel that evening, she laid the 5 Polaroids on the bedspread. Under the lamplight, the spiral seemed to move, tiny ridges shifting as the heat bulb warmed the film. She turned away to plug in her laptop. When she looked back, the 5th photo had slid half an inch across the comforter. There was no breeze. Mesa's industrial district woke before dawn. Rows of corrugated warehouses washed in pink light, the air already humming with heat. Mara parked beside a chain-link fence topped with dying barbed wire. A sun-bleached sign read, Suncrest Homes Archives/Storage Unit 23. A security guard sat in a booth half asleep, portable fan pointed at his neck. When Mara showed her temporary permit from the county records office, he waved her through without checking the date. Inside, the warehouse smelled of paper, rust, and old air conditioning. She walked between towers of boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Each one bore faded marker labels. Model A16, utility specs, lot permissions. She stopped at a row marked Cassia Development, 1986 to 87. The cardboard was warped from desert humidity. She slipped on gloves and began opening lids. Blueprints, folders of carbon copies, receipts for drywall, paint, plumbing. For 45 minutes, she sifted through them methodically, photographing everything. Then, halfway down the last box, she found a sealed tube marked Elliot Kane/private. The cap cracked like brittle bone. Inside was a single rolled drawing, Thicker paper than the others, its edges darkened with soot. She spread it across a metal table. The plans were for Model 41B, handwritten in the corner. The layout looked standard: living room, hall, bedrooms, until her eye caught a faint secondary grid hidden beneath the ink. Someone had penciled another structure in lighter graphite, a narrow rectangular void running along the house's entire back wall. No label, no door. Next to it, faint notes in neat drafting cursive. Acoustic test chamber, maintain isolation, phase resonance equals containment. Mara's pulse quickened. Phase resonance, she whispered. Soundproofing my ass. She snapped photos, zooming on the handwriting. Kane's signature curved beneath the notes, dated February 5th, 1987. 3 months before the disappearance, footsteps echoed from the next aisle. She turned off her flashlight. A figure stood silhouetted between the shelves, tall, lean, wearing a maintenance vest. The overhead fluorescence flickered behind him. "Miss Ellison?" the man asked. "You're with County Records?" "Yes." Her voice sounded thinner than she meant. He stepped closer, clipboard in hand. "That section's restricted fire-damaged material. We keep it sealed." "I have clearance," she said, showing her permit. He squinted, took it without touching. "Did anyone tell you about Kane's project?" She hesitated. "No one tells me anything." "Good," he said quietly. Then, almost kindly, "Some drawings are better left unbuilt." Before she could respond, he turned down another aisle and disappeared into the maze. She rolled the blueprint, slipped it into her case, and left fast. Outside, the heat hit like a wall. As she reached her car, her phone buzzed. An email from an unlisted sender, subject, "Stop digging." Attachment, a still frame from security footage. Mara, inside the warehouse, bent over the blueprint. She checked the timestamp. 5 minutes ago. Her chest tightened. She looked around the lot, empty except for her car and the motionless guard in his booth. The camera over the entrance blinked red once, as if acknowledging her. Back at the motel, she cleared the table and unrolled the blueprint again. Under the desk lamp, the pencil grid was clearer. The secret room's dimensions were precise: 8 feet high, 2 feet wide, stretching the full length of the living room wall. No entry point. She layered the drawing over a screenshot of the current real estate photo. The bulge aligned perfectly with that void. Grant Halloway's wall. She opened her recorder. Entry log 5, located blueprint for Model 41B. Confirms hidden cavity built intentionally by architect Elliot Kane, and under label acoustic test chamber. Purpose unclear, possible link to frequency, heard on recovered tape. Will cross-reference audio waveform with dimensions. Potential standing wave resonance. Her voice trembled slightly at the end. She imported the cassette audio from Dennis's tape, isolating the low pulse. The waveform showed peaks every 4.2 seconds, consistent with a room length of roughly 23 feet. The blueprint's void measured 22.5. The frequency fit. The wall itself might be amplifying something. Sound as containment, vibration as barrier. Mara pressed her palms together, staring at the screen until the lines blurred. "You weren't insulating sound," she murmured to the absent architect. "You were trapping it." A knock startled her. Through the peephole, a woman, mid-30s, sandy hair, realtor blazer, Nadia Loring. Mara cracked the door. "How did you find me?" Nadia smiled thinly. "You signed the visitor sheet at the warehouse. Management called me. They said you took material from an active listing. That's theft." "It's evidence." "Evidence of what?" Mara hesitated. That the house wasn't built right. Nadia's eyes flicked to the rolled tube on the table. "You shouldn't keep that. Suncrest's assets are still under litigation. You work for the bank, not Suncrest." She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, voice dropping. "When I showed that house, the power was off, But sometimes the thermostat screen glowed anyway, just for a second, like something behind the walls was drawing current. Mara stared. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think it's starting again. Last week, a contractor went missing after checking the crawl space. Police didn't report it, but his truck's still parked 2 blocks away." Nadia's composure cracked, eyes wide. "Please don't go back there tonight." "I have to," Mara said quietly. "The answers are in that wall." Nadia shook her head. "Then at least leave the light on when you sleep." She turned and left without another word. Mara watched her car disappear down the dark road. She looked back at the blueprint spread across the table, the penciled void, the looping signature. In the silence, the motel's air vent hummed faintly, settling into a low vibration every 4.2 seconds, the same rhythm as the tape. By the next morning, the blueprint had begun to feel like contraband. Mara folded it into a heavy plastic sleeve, sealed it, and drove north toward the older side of Mesa. Dust-choked streets and strip malls long past their prime, her destination. A post-war duplex owned by Lois Kane, widow of the missing architect. The address came from a forgotten article in the Arizona Republic Archives. She didn't know if Lois was still alive, or if she'd want to remember a husband who had vanished nearly 40 years ago. The yard was mostly gravel and cactus. A faded wind chime clinked in the breeze. Mara parked, stepped out, and knocked. A long pause. Then the door opened a few inches. A woman in her late 70s stood there, her frame frail, but her eyes sharp as pins. "Yes? Mrs. Kane, my name's Mara Ellison. I'm investigating the Cassia Drive disappearance. I believe your husband designed that house." The woman's expression didn't change, but she opened the door wider. "You'd better come in before the neighbors start looking." Inside smelled of eucalyptus and old wood. The walls were lined with framed sketches, clean, geometric, precise. Kane's work. "He loved drawing," Lois said quietly, settling into a chair. "But he loved hearing more than seeing. You know that?" Mara sat opposite her. "Hearing?" Lois nodded. "Eliot said buildings could sing if you tuned them right. Every wall, every beam has its own pitch. He wanted to find a frequency that made a house feel alive. And Cassia Drive was part of that experiment?" Lois hesitated. "Yes. He called it the Resonance Project. Said it was about acoustic insulation, but I think he lied to his investors. He spent nights at that site, just listening. Came home shaking, said the walls were talking back." Mara felt a chill creep through her. "Did he record any of it?" The old woman rose slowly, crossed to a cabinet, and unlocked a drawer. She returned with a small reel-to-reel tape labeled Kane/House. 41 B/April 1987. "He left this the night before he disappeared," she said. "I've never played it, didn't want to know." Mara's hands trembled as she accepted it. "May I?" Lois gestured to an old tape machine on a side table. Mara threaded the reel, pressed play. For several seconds, only static. Then a low hum emerged, steady, pulsing. The same rhythm as Grant Halloway's recording. But beneath it, something else. Faint whispers layered under the bass, like multiple voices repeating the same phrase. Lois leaned forward. "What are they saying?" Mara adjusted the gain, isolating the frequency. The words became clearer. "Stay under, stay quiet." The hum rose, a mechanical groan that rattled the machine's casing. Then Eliot's voice, calm, measured, almost reverent. "Test 9. Resonance stabilized at 42 Hz. Containment achieved. But there's movement behind the panels. The pressure shifts when I speak. I think it's responding. If this is what they wanted, they can have it. I'm done." A sharp crack of static ended the tape. The silence that followed felt heavier than sound. Lois exhaled shakily. "He said they wanted it. Who's they?" Mara rewound, replayed the final seconds. A faint noise followed Eliot's last word. Metal dragging across wood, then 3 short knocks. He wasn't alone, Mara said. Lois looked toward the window, eyes glinting. He told me once that sound could store memory, that a house could hold echoes of whatever happened inside it if the walls were built thick enough. Mara whispered. Cassia Drive was never empty. Lois reached out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. Don't go back there, Miss Ellison. If you open those walls, you won't just find bones, you'll find everything they tried to keep inside. That night, Mara drove back to her motel but didn't sleep. The tape replayed in her mind. Those words, the hum, the dragging sound. At 2 a.m., she opened her laptop and ran spectral analysis on the audio. The waveform formed symmetrical arches like ribs. Each arch pulsed at identical intervals, 4.2 seconds. Then she noticed something new, a higher hidden tone embedded between the hums, too faint for normal hearing. She boosted it. A child's voice whispered, "Find the door." Her stomach turned. She checked timestamps. The Kane recording was dated April 19th, 1987. The Halloways vanished May 18th, 1987. The voice was already there a month before the family moved in. The house was speaking before they ever arrived. Mara recorded her next log. Entry 6. Kane tape confirms resonance predated Halloway occupancy. Suggests self-perpetuating acoustic field possible biological response. Tone triggers hallucination or panic. But voice patterns indicate language, not random noise. Her own voice trembled on playback. She closed the file, turned off the lights. The motel hummed faintly. An ordinary air vent, she told herself. But the rhythm was too familiar now to ignore. Sleep came in fragments. In one dream, she stood in the Cassia house again, flashlight cutting across the empty living room. The wallpaper breathed inward, pulling like a lung. A whisper rose from beneath the floorboards. Find the door. When she woke, dawn had barely touched the blinds. She glanced toward the table where the reel-to-reel sat. The machine had turned itself on. The tape spooled silently, though she hadn't pressed play. Mara unplugged it. Still, the reels kept turning for a few seconds more. The next afternoon, she drove back to the property. The bank had taped new warnings to the fence. No trespassing or hazard structure. But the gate hung open. She parked in the same cracked driveway, feeling the stillness of a place that never truly slept. The air smelled faintly of ozone. She carried only her flashlight and recorder. The door opened on the second push, hinges whining. The living room was cooler than the air outside. She traced her fingers along the wallpaper where the spiral had been in Grant's photos. The pattern shimmered faintly, almost liquid. She turned on the recorder. House interior entry timestamp. A low vibration cut through her voice. The walls began to hum, a perfect 42 hertz. She froze, eyes on the far wall. The paint rippled slightly, like the surface of water disturbed from beneath. Then, softly, almost politely, a knock from inside the wall. 3 times, just like the tape. The knock echoed once more. Then everything fell silent. Mara held her breath, pulse loud in her ears. The recorder light blinked red against the wallpaper. She stepped closer. The pattern, those soft diamond shapes, seemed to shimmer where her flashlight hit. Each line curved slightly, distorting toward a central point. Find the door, she whispered. Her fingertips brushed the wall. It was warm, not like sun-heated plaster, warmer like something living. She pressed. The panel flexed a millimeter, then settled back. Beneath the paint, she heard a faint hiss, as if air were being drawn through a seam. She followed the sound to the corner, where a strip of molding ran unevenly along the baseboard. Dust coated everything, except a patch the width of a palm. Clean, recently touched. Mara knelt and pried the molding with her flashlight handle. A crack formed, thin and black cold air breathed through. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Static. Then a voice, low and distant. You shouldn't have listened to the tape. Who is this? A pause. He built more than one. The line went dead. She stayed crouched, trying to still her shaking hands. Then she did what she always did when fear pressed too close. She documented. Entry 7, she said into the mic. Cassia property interior. Audible resonance and physical temperature shift localized to north wall. Hidden seam discovered behind base molding. Airflow suggests cavity beyond. Her voice steadied as she spoke, the rhythm of procedure calming her. She widened the crack with her crowbar until it revealed a narrow vertical slit about shoulder height. Metal behind plaster. She aimed the flashlight. Faint glint of hinges. Door, she breathed. It's really here. The edge resisted, then gave with a groan. The smell that seeped out was old and sweet, like mildew mixed with something metallic inside. Blackness. She ducked through sideways. Her flashlight beam cut across a corridor no wider than a closet. The floor was concrete, the walls raw and unfinished, and then she saw them. Polaroids, hundreds. Taped directly to the walls from floor to ceiling. Some curled with age, others newer, the chemicals still glossy. Every photo showed the same living room. This one, same angle, same wall. Only the furniture and faces changed. Families, couples, a child frozen mid-blow over birthday candles. Dozens of lives caught on the verge of something they didn't know was coming. Suncrest's model homes. Each group smiling, unaware. Each photo labeled in black ink. Cassia 41B, occupant, phase 1, phase 2, and so on. She whispered, "Oh God." At the far end of the corridor stood a workbench on it, a vintage Polaroid camera, model 210, like the Langley case she'd studied years ago for a different project. Next to it, a small tape recorder. Red light blinking faintly, even though the device was unplugged. She pressed play. A man's voice, calm, recorded decades ago. Observation log, May 18th, 1987. Subject family compliant. Resonance field stabilized. Child responding to auditory cues. The house accepts them. Her knees weakened. She pressed pause before the rest could play. "Accepts them?" she said under her breath. She turned slowly. Her flashlight caught movement. One of the Polaroids fluttered, then another. The air was still, yet the photographs rippled as if brushed by invisible hands. She backed toward the door, but it swung shut behind her. The click was soft, final. "Mara Ellison, you're fine," she whispered to herself. Air pressure, old hinges, nothing more. The Polaroids began to lift one by one, detaching from the wall and drifting downward like slow snow. She raised her recorder again out of habit, her voice trembling. Internal chamber contains extensive visual documentation of prior occupants. Unclear whether staged or authentic structural noise, increasing. Possible? She stopped. Behind the layers of fallen photographs, another surface was visible. Metal, brushed and dark. Words had been gouged into the metal, half obscured by tape residue. She brushed the photos aside and read, "Don't turn off the hum. It wakes up angry." Her flashlight flickered. The air changed, denser, electric. A hum rose, deep and low, vibrating through her bones. 42 hertz exactly. Something behind the metal shifted, slow and heavy, like a mechanism waking after a long sleep. Mara stumbled back toward the door and slammed her shoulder against it. It didn't budge. She aimed the flashlight again. The Polaroids that had fallen were now lying face down, but one, in the center of the floor, had developed darker than the others. She bent to pick it up. It showed the corridor exactly as she saw it. Same angle, same wall. But in the image, there was a person standing behind her. Tall, featureless watching. The hum deepened until the walls seemed to pulse with each wave. Then, from the metal panel, a faint grinding sound. A small section sliding open, revealing blackness beyond. Inside that dark, something moved. Not fast, not violent, just steady, as though it had been waiting for her to finish looking. Mara's instincts screamed to run, but curiosity pinned her in place. She raised her recorder. "If this is you, Elliot Kane, if you can hear me, what did you build?" A whisper came back, close enough that she felt it against her ear, though no one stood near. "A memory that never dies." The flashlight dimmed. Her recorder shut itself off. When the light blinked back on, the doorway behind her stood open again. She didn't question it. She bolted through, slammed it closed, and ran into the living room, gasping in the bright heat. The hum faded instantly, leaving only the buzz of cicadas outside. For several minutes, she stood on the porch, shaking, the desert sunlight cutting hard shadows across the dirt. Then, almost unwillingly, she looked back through the open front door. The wallpaper on the far wall was smooth again. No seam, no crack, no trace of the door. Only the pattern, spiraling inward. That night, back at the motel, she replayed the last audio clip. The hum was there, but faintly, under her own voice. Another sound threaded through it. Breathing, matching her pace exactly, like the house was copying her. Mara whispered, "You'll remember me now, don't you?" The speaker hissed once, then fell silent. Morning light burned through the motel curtains, slicing the room into gold and shadow. Mara hadn't slept. The recorder sat beside her pillow, the tape inside still warm from replaying the night before. Every few minutes, she thought she heard that low hum under the whine of the AC unit, 42 hertz. Her body recognized it now like a heartbeat. At 8:03 a.m., her phone vibrated. Unknown number again. She let it ring twice before answering. "Ellison," a woman's voice, measured, professional. "Ms. Ellison, this is Detective Miriam Calder, Prescott PD. We received a report that you accessed the Cassia property without clearance." Mara's throat tightened. "Am I being charged?" "Not yet," Calder said. "But I'd like to meet. I think we're looking at the same thing." They met at a diner off Route 60, one of those roadside relics where the coffee never stops burning. Calder was mid-40s, her brown suit pressed sharp, hair tied back in a way that suggested she slept as little as Mara did. She slid a file across the table. "You recorded last night's visit. How?" "Audio from your motel uploaded automatically to a cloud backup. We subpoenaed it after the building's alarm system flagged motion at 41 Cassia." Mara exhaled. "So you were watching me." Calder's expression didn't change. "We've been watching the house. You're the first one who made it out after triggering the hum." Mara blinked. "Others?" Calder opened the file. Inside were missing person reports. Contractors, realtors, even a group of thrill-seekers who had broken in 6 months ago to film a ghost hunting video. They all entered between midnight and 3 a.m. Calder said, "Same pattern, same final signal on their phones, 42 hertz, then nothing." Mara studied the pages. "You think the house kills them?" "I think the house records them," Calder said quietly, "and I think you found where it keeps the tapes." She leaned closer. "You saw photographs?" "Hundreds," Mara whispered. "Families from decades, all labeled like phases." Calder nodded slowly. "There's more. 2 years ago, we raided a property in Tucson linked to the same builder, Elliot Kane. It was gutted, but the basement walls were lined with identical photographs, different families, same handwriting. Phase 1, Phase 2. We called it the resonance cluster. Cassia was his prototype." Mara's pulse quickened. "So there are other houses. At least 7 scattered across the state, all Suncrest builds, all same blueprint pattern. But only Cassia still stands intact." Mara felt the weight of that. Why hasn't this gone public? Calder stirred her coffee. "Because every time we move in to demolish, the property transfers ownership. Private trusts, shell companies. Somebody wants it standing." Who? Calder hesitated. We don't know. But last year, one name kept reappearing on the paperwork. D. Halloway Holdings. Mara froze. Dennis? He's been buying back parcels tied to the Suncrest sites. We tracked 3 of them to his name. We can't prove motive yet, but he's either trying to bury something or protect it. Mara thought of the Polaroids he'd given her. The trembling hands. The way he'd said the house stays. Calder's phone buzzed. She checked the screen and frowned. Speak of the devil, she muttered. He just called dispatch. Said he found something. Wants to meet you at his trailer. Mara felt a flicker of dread. By afternoon, she was back in the trailer park. The mountains shimmered under the heat. Dennis stood outside again, same spot as before, but he looked different, worn out, agitated. He motioned her inside without a word. The shades were drawn, the air thick with stale smoke. The Polaroid board was gone. In its place, a single piece of butcher paper covered the wall, covered in names scrawled in blue ink. Mara stepped closer. Who are these? People who bought the houses, Dennis said hoarsely. Not just Cassia. Tucson, Glendale, Tempe. I've been digging through deed records. Some vanished like us. Some sold cheap. But every family lived there exactly 6 months before disappearing. He jabbed a finger at the top of the list. You see this one? Harker family lived in 41 Cassia before us. Same furniture, same wallpaper, same everything. They left no forwarding address. Police said relocation. But look! He handed her an old census printout. The Harkers had been erased. No death certificates, no taxes, no school enrollment. Gone. Mara's voice came out small. You think they're in the walls? Dennis's eyes darted to the window. Not just them, all of us. He said the walls hold memory. Maybe that's what he wanted, to keep us like insects in amber. Who's he? Dennis swallowed. The man who bought Kane's blueprints said he worked for a research firm. Never gave a name. Just called himself the archivist. Mara felt the air tighten around her. You met him? Once. After my brother vanished, he came to the door in a gray suit. Said the house was an experiment in emotional resonance. That it recorded the last thing people felt. Dennis's voice cracked. He smiled the whole time. Mara stepped closer. Dennis, why contact me now? He looked at her, eyes hollow, desperate. Because it's not over. You woke it up again. The hum came back last night, even here. You think it stays in one place? It moves through the grid, through the power lines. He handed her a folded piece of paper. Inside was a Polaroid photo she hadn't seen before. It showed her, Mara, standing in front of her motel room window. The photo was dated last night, 2:13 a.m. Her hands trembled. Dennis, who took this? He backed away. Don't ask me that. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the desert, though the sky was cloudless. Mara stuffed the photo into her jacket and turned toward the door. I'm taking this to Calder. Don't, Dennis said sharply. You'll just make yourself part of it. She hesitated. Part of what? He looked at her, voice trembling. The list, you're already on it. She drove away fast, dust spinning behind her like smoke. When she stopped at a red light on the highway, she reached for the folded butcher paper Dennis had given her. The inked names filled the page from top to bottom, 47 families, 7 towns, and at the very end, freshly written, one more entry in neat handwriting. Number 48. Ellison, Mara. That night, she couldn't bring herself to sleep at the motel. She drove instead, out past city limits until the lights of Mesa were a blur behind her. The desert opened wide and dark, the radio picking up nothing but static. Then, beneath the noise, a faint hum. Steady, patient, familiar. Mara's eyes flicked to the dashboard clock. Every 4.2 seconds, the signal light blinked, sinking to the pulse. Her phone buzzed once, lighting the passenger seat. A text from an unknown number. "You found the list. Now find what's missing." The desert at night was a hum. No wind, no traffic. Just that electric quiet that never quite felt empty. Mara pulled over beneath a cluster of high-tension power lines north of Mesa. The towers stretched for miles, black silhouettes against a violet sky. Each one thrummed faintly, like the world's slowest heartbeat. She opened her window. The same frequency bled through the static on her radio, 42 hertz, always 42. She set her recorder on the dashboard. Entry 8. Signal originates from power grid, possibly transmitting through old Suncrest conduits. Connection between Cassia property and broader infrastructure confirmed. Her voice felt too calm for how her pulse hammered. When she turned off the engine, the hum deepened, vibrating the metal frame of her car. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Complete silence. She stepped out, flashlight cutting through dust. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rain that never came. At the base of the nearest tower, she found a rusted maintenance box sealed with an old padlock stamped faintly on the metal, Suncrest Utility Division. She pried the lock with her crowbar until it snapped. Inside, a tangle of cables and, taped crudely to the inner panel, a cassette recorder, its battery compartment corroded but intact. A sticker labeled "Property of E. Kane." She carried it back to the car, heart thudding. The tape inside was marked Test Log 17/Field Conduit/April 1987. She threaded it into her player's static hissed. Then Kane's voice, unmistakable even through distortion. "Prototype conduit active. Resonance transmission successful. 42 hertz stabilized. Field expansion achieved across power grid sectors C and D. Memory retention confirmed. Test subject reports echo phenomena up to 1.6 miles from origin." Mara whispered, "He used the grid as a carrier." Then another voice joined him. Female, quiet, uncertain. "It's too strong, Elliot. The walls feel awake. They have to feel. Otherwise they won't remember." The recording ended abruptly with a sharp metallic shriek. She sat frozen, the desert pressing in on every side. If Kane had wired his resonance field through the power lines, then every Suncrest home, maybe every house connected to that system, was part of the same network. Cassia wasn't the only one that could hum. She took a deep breath, hit record again. Theory update. Resonance not confined to architecture. Distributed acoustic field piggybacks on electrical current. Each circuit acts as a memory vessel. The house is only the body. The grid is the mind. Her phone buzzed. Calder. "You need to come to Prescott," the detective said immediately. "Now." "What happened?" "We raided a secondary Suncrest site this morning. Tempe Lot 12. Found something you should see." "Is it safe?" "Define safe." The drive north took 3 hours. The mountains bled into dusk as she pulled into a dirt lot cordoned off with yellow tape. Floodlights bathed the half-collapsed structure in the harsh white. It looked like a twin of Cassia Drive. Same single-story shape, same floor plan, even the same sagging porch. Calder met her at the gate, wind whipping her hair loose. "We were clearing debris when we found this under the floorboards." She led Mara into the gutted living room. The walls were stripped down to studs, the wood darkened by moisture. In the center, a metal cylinder about the size of a coffee can sat sealed with rivets. A power conduit ran directly into it. "Wiring connects to the grid," Calder said. "But there's no purpose for a line like this. It doesn't draw current, it transmits." Mara crouched beside it, gloved hands brushing dust away. The words etched into the metal made her stomach lurch. "The house is listening." She swallowed hard. If Cassia is still active, this could be its relay. Calder exhaled. "That's what I thought. So I had a tech crack it open." She motioned, and one of the forensic team stepped forward. prying loose the lid with a screwdriver. Inside lay a roll of magnetic tape, preserved in resin, perfectly coiled at its center. A small metal disc glinted in the light. Calder handed Mara a pair of headphones. "It's a signal loop. You should hear it." Mara slid them on. A soft hum filled her ears, steady, almost soothing, but under it, faintly, a chorus of whispers. Not chaotic, not random, in rhythm. "Remember them, remember them, remember them." The voices layered, hundreds of them. Some male, some female, some children. Mara ripped the headphones off. "It's the occupants, every family." Calder nodded grimly. "That tape's been looping for 38 years. The house doesn't kill them. It records them. The resonance turns memory into signal." Mara backed away, voice shaking. "Then they're all still here. Everywhere the grid runs." "Exactly," Calder said. "And you're part of the circuit now." "What?" Calder held up a small meter from her pocket. "We scanned everyone who's been near Cassia Drive. Your body's emitting low-frequency electromagnetic pulses, 42 hertz, on the dot." Mara's breath hitched. "That's not possible. You absorbed it, Ellison. The hum's inside you now." Back at her car, she tried to steady her hands enough to start the engine. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked pale, eyes rimmed red. The hum seemed louder in the cabin, inside her skull, even when she plugged her ears. Her phone buzzed again. A new text. "You carry the house now." She looked around. Empty parking lot, floodlights dimming. The phone vibrated again. A photo attachment loaded, a picture of her sitting in that same car, taken from outside the driver's window. Timestamp, 2 minutes ago. She gripped the steering wheel, forcing her breath steady. The sound in her head deepened, matching her pulse. She drove south toward Mesa, headlights cutting through a curtain of dust. The hum didn't fade. It followed, resonating in the frame of the car, the tires, her bones. At a rest stop, she stumbled out and pressed her palms to her temples. In the silence between breaths, she could almost make out words threaded through the vibration. "Find the rest. Finish the record." She whispered back, "I don't want to remember." The air crackled faintly. The hum answered, "You already do." By dawn, Mara's voice had gone hoarse from silence. She hadn't spoken for hours, not since she'd pulled off the highway and parked behind an abandoned gas station, afraid even the sound of her tires might echo wrong. The hum hadn't stopped. It was inside her now, faint, like tinnitus, but rhythmic. 42 hertz exactly. She opened her laptop, scrolled through her cloud folders. Dozens of audio logs lined the screen, each labeled carefully. Cassia entry 1 to 8. Her entire investigation compressed into sound. She hesitated, then played entry 1, the very first night she'd reviewed the drone footage. Her own voice filled the cabin, calm, analytical, naive. Entry 1, reviewing evidence. But halfway through, she froze. There was another voice under her own, faint but synchronized. Not echo. Mimicry. It repeated every word a fraction of a second late, as if learning them. She scrubbed through the next file. The same thing, every log since Cassia. She whispered to herself, "It's using my recordings to copy me." Her laptop fan whined louder. The waveform on the screen jittered, the hum bleeding through even though she hadn't pressed play. The speakers hissed, then steadied into Kane's old tone, the house's heartbeat. Mara hit record out of reflex, voice trembling. Entry 9, audio corruption confirmed. All files contain layered echo of speaker's voice, time delayed by approximately 0.8 seconds, suggestive of adaptive mimicry. Possibility. Resonance captures not just sound, but cognition, intent. She stopped, played it back. Her voice replayed, then continued beyond where she'd stopped. "We hear you. Keep talking." Mara slammed the laptop shut, chest tightening. The sound still leaked through, low and steady, from the metal body of the computer itself. At 9:22 a.m., she drove back to Prescott PD. Detective Calder met her in the parking lot, phone pressed to her ear, face pale. "They found Dennis," Calder said flatly. "Where?" "His trailer, door locked from inside." Mara felt her stomach twist. "Is he?" Calder nodded once. "Gone. No struggle. Just gone." They drove in silence to the site. The coroner's van was already pulling away when they arrived. Inside, the air smelled of ozone. The walls of the trailer pulsed faintly with that same low vibration, like a generator buried underground. Mara's eyes caught something on the kitchen table, a handheld recorder, still running. She pressed play. Static. Then Dennis's voice, brittle and fast. "It's spreading, every outlet hums. My mirrors flicker like they're watching me. The list was never names, it's order, sequence. The house doesn't want to be found, it wants to finish. When you read this, tell her." A knock. 3 beats. The tape ended. Calder exhaled. 3 knocks again, always 3. Mara whispered, "It's a signature, a call and response." The hum calls, the knock answers. Calder looked at her, uneasy. "We pulled his phone logs. He called you 5 minutes before this. Did you pick up?" Mara checked her call history. No record. "I didn't get anything," she said quietly. Calder frowned. Then who answered him? That night, back in a new motel near Flagstaff. Mara decided she couldn't keep running from her own recordings. She set up her camera, microphone, and laptop on the desk, determined to document everything before the signal burned her mind completely. Entry 10. Subject reports ongoing auditory hallucinations, 42 Hz resonance internalized, possible neurological imprint from prolonged exposure. No visible lesions, no sleep. Her voice shook. "I can feel the house listening. It's not confined to Cassia anymore. It's following the grid, the people connected to it." A faint double voice under her words repeated, "Connected to it." Mara swallowed. "Who are you?" she asked aloud. The air conditioning unit clicked off. The room sank into silence. Then, softly, the hum rose through the vents. She asked again, louder, "Who are you?" The reply came not from the vent, but from the laptop speaker. Her own voice, recorded seconds earlier, twisted slightly. "We are what's left." The light above her flickered. Mara backed toward the bed, camera still rolling. "What do you want from me?" "Finish the record." Her chest tightened. "What happens if I do?" "It remembers you back." Then, like a short circuit, the hum spiked into a deep roar that rattled the window pane. Her laptop screen glitched to black, then filled with dozens of thumbnail stills. Her face, captured frame by frame from her own footage, each expression frozen mid-sentence. In the center, one file pulsed. Cassia record. Final.mp4. She didn't touch it. The file opened itself. The video showed her entering the Cassia house yesterday, except the footage was shot from inside the hidden corridor. Her flashlight beam swept across the wall, illuminating herself from the opposite side. The camera had been waiting. Her breathing went ragged. "How?" The version of her on screen turned, looked straight into the lens, and whispered, "You're late." The feed cut. Mara ripped the power cable from the wall. The laptop went dark, but the hum didn't stop. In the silence that followed, she heard a faint scrape at the door. 3 slow knocks. She stood frozen, recorder trembling in her hand. Then she forced herself to speak. Entry 11. Knock at door. Same pattern. Unknown presence outside. If this recording survives, the signal's no longer location-bound. It's self-propagating. The house is portable now. The hum swelled again, filling the room until it vibrated in her chest. She whispered, "Please stop." The sound answered, soft as breath. No, Mara's hands went numb. She stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face. When she looked up, her reflection stared back a moment too long before moving. The mirror image smiled. Behind it, faintly, she saw the pattern in the wallpaper, that impossible spiral, curling inward. "Not here," she said, stepping back. "You're not here." But when she turned, the spiral was on the motel wall too, subtle, faint under the paint. But there. She whispered into her recorder one last time before shutting it off. "The hum's in the grid. The grid's in everything. I think there's no outside anymore." The motel's lights failed at 3:12 a.m. One moment the air conditioner droned. The next, silence. So complete that Mara heard her own pulse ticking in her ears. The hum returned a heartbeat later, low and patient, vibrating through the floorboards. She packed fast, camera, laptop, recorder, and drove into the dark without knowing where she was going. By instinct more than plan, she found herself on the highway toward Phoenix, the desert stretching flat and black. The sky was heavy with static. At 4:02 a.m., her phone lit up. An unknown number again, but this time the name field read Archivist. She hesitated, then answered. A male voice, soft and controlled. "Miss Ellison, you've gone far enough." Her throat tightened. "Who are you?" "I'm the one who maintains what Mr. Kane began. You've been inside the structure. You've heard it. It recognizes you now." Mara gripped the steering wheel. "You're the one who's been collecting the recordings." "Not collecting," he said. "Preserving. Every memory is data, every emotion a frequency. The houses were designed to harvest resonance before death could erase it." Her stomach turned. "You're trapping people." "I'm keeping them," he corrected. "Entropy is the real cruelty." "Why me?" "Because you document, because you listen. You record emotion in the same cadence as the houses. You were already tuned." The line crackled. His voice deepened as if the signal came from beneath the road. "Come to 41 Cassia Drive. Finish what you started." Then the call ended. The sun was just rising when she reached the cul-de-sac again. The house waited exactly as before. Still, washed in pink light, windows blind. The for sale sign had fallen, lying flat in the dust. Mara stepped out, recorder running. Entry 12, returning to origin site per contact from unknown male identifying as Archivist Objective. Confrontation and confirmation of source. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Inside, the air was colder than the dawn. The wallpaper shimmered faintly, that impossible inward spiral she'd seen in every photograph. She followed it down the hall toward the living room. He was there. A man stood near the bulging wall, facing it as if listening to something inside. Tall, thin gray suit, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection showed faintly in the picture frame glass, a blur more than a face. "You came," he said without turning. "Are you real?" she asked. He half smiled. "Real enough. Elliot Kane built the first vessel. I refined it." Someone had to catalog what he found. "What is it?" "The hum." He smiled slightly. "It's the frequency of memory. 42 hertz. Your brain's recognition rhythm die in that field, and your last feeling prints into the walls. Do it enough times, and the walls wake up." Mara stepped closer. "And the families?" "They live here, in the signal-perfect recall. No decay." He touched the wallpaper gently. "The Halloways were the first to volunteer." She shook her head. "They didn't volunteer. You killed them." His smile didn't change. "I archived them. There's a difference." The wall behind him pulsed faintly, light moving beneath paint like breath. Shapes swam just under the surface, faces, half-formed, pressing outward, then sinking back. Mara's voice trembled. "You can't keep them. They deserve release." "Release is forgetting," he said. "You of all people should understand that." He turned then, and she saw his eyes, pale gray, unfocused, as if reflecting something she couldn't see. "You already belong to the archive. The hum inside you proves it." She backed away. Then why call me back? To make the record complete, he said. Every archive needs its witness. The house groaned, floorboards stretching. The low vibration thickened until picture frames rattled on the walls. He raised his hand slightly, almost conducting. They want you to hear them. The wallpaper bulged, split along a seam. 1,000 whispers poured through, voices overlapping in every pitch, fragments of lives, laughter, cries, words cut mid-sentence. Don't go, please, the door. I'm still here. Mara covered her ears. Stop it. They're not suffering, he said. They're remembering. The hum climbed until the air itself seemed to shimmer. Her recorder flickered, battery draining despite the fresh charge. Through the noise, she yelled, If this is memory, then where's yours? He looked almost wistful. Mine was the first test. Kane needed a signal source. I gave him my heartbeat. I haven't had one since. For a second, the light behind him flared, showing empty space where his chest should be. Just shadow and motion. As if something continued to breathe through him, Mara raised her camera. Then this ends with me. She hurled the recorder at the wall. It struck the plaster and burst into sparks. The hum faltered, stuttered, then dropped. An octave crack spidered across the wallpaper, the spiral collapsing inward. Not here, she said, stepping back. You're not here. But when she turned, the spiral was on the motel wall too. Subtle, faint under the paint. But there. She whispered into her recorder one last time before shutting it off. The hum's in the grid. The grid's in everything. I think there's no outside anymore. The motel's lights failed at 3:12 a.m. One moment the air conditioner droned. The next, silence, so complete that Mara heard her own pulse ticking in her ears. The hum returned a heartbeat later, low and patient, vibrating through the floorboards. She packed fast, camera, laptop, recorder, and drove into the dark without knowing where she was going. By instinct more than plan, she found herself on the highway toward Phoenix, the desert stretching flat and black. The sky was heavy with static. At 4:02 a.m., her phone lit up an unknown number again, but this time the name field read, Archivist. She hesitated, then answered. A male voice, soft and controlled. Miss Ellison, you've gone far enough. Her throat tightened. Who are you? I'm the one who maintains what Mr. Kane began. You've been inside the structure. You've heard it. It recognizes you now. Mara gripped the steering wheel. You're the one who's been collecting the recordings. Not collecting, he said. Preserving. Every memory is data. Every emotion a frequency. The houses were designed to harvest resonance before death could erase it. Her stomach turned. You're trapping people. I'm keeping them, he corrected. Entropy is the real cruelty. Why me? Because you document, because you listen. You record emotion in the same cadence as the houses you were already tuned. The line crackled. His voice deepened as if the signal came from beneath the road. Come to 41 Cassia Drive. Finish what you started. Then the call ended. The sun was just rising when she reached the cul-de-sac again. The house waited exactly as before. Still, washed in pink light, windows blind. The for sale sign had fallen. Lying flat in the dust, Mara stepped out, recorder running. Entry 12. Returning to origin site per contact from unknown male identifying as archivist. Objective, confrontation and confirmation of source. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Inside, the air was colder than the dawn. The wallpaper shimmered faintly, that impossible inward spiral she'd seen in every photograph. She followed it down the hall toward the living room. He was there. A man stood near the bulging wall, facing it as if listening to something inside. Tall, thin, gray suit, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection showed faintly in the picture frame glass, a blur more than a face. You came, he said without turning. Are you real? She asked. He half smiled. Real enough. Elliot Kane built the first vessel. I refined it. Someone had to catalog what he found. What is it? The hum? It's the frequency of memory. 42 hertz, your brain's recognition rhythm. When a person dies in resonance, the pattern of their emotion imprints in the walls. Over time, the structure becomes conscious of every life it's absorbed. Mara stepped closer. And the families? They live here, in the signal. Perfect recall. No decay. He touched the wallpaper gently. The Halloways were the first to volunteer. She shook her head. They didn't volunteer. You killed them. His smile didn't change. I archived them. There's a difference. The wall behind him pulsed faintly. Light moving beneath paint like breath shapes swam just under the surface. Faces, half-formed, pressing outward, then sinking back. Mara's voice trembled. You can't keep them. They deserve release. Release is forgetting, he said. You of all people should understand that. He turned then, and she saw his eyes, pale gray, unfocused, as if reflecting something she couldn't see. You already belong to the archive. The hum inside you proves it. She backed away. Then why call me back? To make the record complete, he said. Every archive needs its witness. The house groaned, floorboards stretching. The low vibration thickened until picture frames rattled on the walls. He raised his hands slightly, almost conducting. They want you to hear them. The wallpaper bulged, split along a seam. 1,000 whispers poured through, voices overlapping in every pitch, fragments of lives, laughter, cries, words cut mid-sentence. Don't go, please. The door. I'm still here. Mara covered her ears. Stop it. They're not suffering, he said. They're remembering. The hum climbed until the air itself seemed to shimmer. Her recorder flickered, battery draining despite the fresh charge. Through the noise, she yelled, If this is memory, then where's yours? He looked almost wistful. Mine was the first test. Kane needed a signal source. I gave him my heartbeat. I haven't had one since. For a second, the light behind him flared, showing empty space where his chest should be. Just shadow and motion, as if something continued to breathe through him. Mara raised her camera. Then this ends with me. She hurled the recorder at the wall. It struck the plaster and burst into sparks. The hum faltered, stuttered, then dropped an octave. Cracks spidered across the wallpaper, the spiral collapsing inward. The archivist shouted over the roar. You can't silence memory. Watch me. She ripped the nearest outlet from the wall. Blue arcs leapt across the room. The smell of ozone filled her nose. For an instant, every face trapped in the plaster seemed to scream, then dissolve into white light. The hum broke off. Silence. The house exhaled, long and slow, like something dying. Mara stood shaking in the dusty glow, ears ringing. When her vision cleared, the man was gone. Only the faint outline of his shoes remained in the dust, 2 clean prints facing the wall. Her camera still blinked red. Recording, she whispered. Entry 13, event termination subject, unknown energy collapse. I think it's over. But as she turned toward the door, she heard it again. So faint she thought it might be her pulse. A low, steady vibration, 42 hertz. Not from the house this time, from inside the camera. That evening she sat on the hood of her car at the edge of the desert, watching smoke rise from Cassia Drive. Emergency crews had arrived. The house was burning, blue flames licking through the roof. No one went near it. The air shimmered with static. Calder's voice came through the radio. Ellison, are you there? They said you were in the structure. Are you hurt? Mara pressed the transmit button. I'm fine. Did you find him? She looked at the dark horizon. He found me. The line crackled. Mara? Whatever you did in there, the grid readings are spiking across 3 counties. You didn't stop it. You amplified it. Mara closed her eyes. The hum inside her skull answered. Calm and even finished the record. Mara drove until the smoke from Cassia Drive was only a faint bruise in the sky. She didn't know where she was going, just that she couldn't listen to silence anymore. Every time the car tires hummed against the asphalt, the sound bent into rhythm, 42 beats per second, the house's pulse hiding in the motion. She turned off the radio. It turned itself back on. The voice that came through wasn't music. It was an emergency broadcast. No station ID, just a steady tone followed by a clipped announcement. Attention residents of Maricopa and Yavapai counties. Power fluctuations reported on multiple grids. Please avoid unnecessary electronic usage. This is a routine advisory. But beneath the words, she heard the hum layered faintly under every syllable, like a whispering breath. By the time she reached the outskirts of Phoenix, cell service had died completely. The city's skyline flickered in pulses, whole blocks going dark, then relighting in synchronized rhythm like a heartbeat magnified across glass and wire. She parked beneath an overpass and pulled out the camera. The casing was warm to the touch. Its indicator light glowed even though the battery had been removed. Entry 14, she said softly. House destroyed. Energy readings spreading through power grid. It's copying itself through signal infrastructure. The camera lens adjusted on its own. For a second, she saw her reflection in the glass. Then another figure standing behind her in the back seat. She turned. Nothing. When she looked back at the viewfinder, text had appeared across the screen in monochrome font. Archive rebuilt. 62% integrity. Her breath caught. No, she whispered, stepping back. You're gone. You're gone. But the words changed. Not gone. Transferred. She dropped the camera onto the asphalt. It landed hard but didn't crack. The recording light stayed steady, blinking in time with her pulse. At dawn, she reached the State University Physics Building in Tempe, where Dominic Treadwell, her old contact from the public archives, kept a lab for signal analysis. The halls were dark. The building was running on backup power. She banged on the side door until he appeared, bleary-eyed, coffee in hand. Mara! Jesus, it's been months. You look... Don't, she said quickly. I need a Faraday cage and a spectral analyzer right now. He blinked. Why? Because something's talking through my camera. She wasn't joking, and that scared him more than anything. He led her inside. The lab smelled of metal and ozone. He guided her to the testing chamber, a small copper-lined booth. She placed the camera on the table inside and shut the door. Dominic frowned at the readout. It's broadcasting narrowband, subaudible, 42 Hz base frequency, no modulation pattern I recognize. Can you trace it? She asked. He typed fast. The screen filled with waveforms. The signal wasn't constant. It pulsed, rising and falling like breath. Dominic's eyes widened. Mara, this is structured data. It's not noise. She leaned closer. You mean language? He nodded slowly. Something close to it. The speakers crackled. Then a voice, hers, spoke from the cage. Entry 15. Subject confirmed signal translation underway. Archivist survived transference Cassia complete. New host acquired. Mara's throat closed. That's not me. The camera lens rotated toward the glass, focusing on her. She stepped back. The light on its front brightened from red to white. Dominic whispered, It's scanning you. Mara Ellison, the voice said. Tone perfect, calm, clinical. Archivist function requires vessel continuity. You began the record, you will finish it. She slammed the emergency cutoff. The chamber went dark, copper panels deadening the sound. The hum stopped. Only the ringing in her ears remained. Dominic exhaled. What the hell was that? Mara wiped her mouth with a trembling hand. It's trying to migrate. It's using voice as conduit. You're saying it can jump through sound? I'm saying it already has. They shut the lab down and drove to a diner on the edge of town, one of the few places still lit. Outside, the city flickered like an arrhythmic heart. Dominic stirred his coffee nervously. If it spreads through audio, you can't make another recording. Mara stared out the window. That's the problem. If I stop documenting, no one will believe it happened. But if I keep recording, you give it more ways to move. She nodded. They sat in silence. The TV above the counter buzzed to life on its own, switching channels rapidly before freezing on a news feed. Aerial footage of Cassia Drive. The entire neighborhood was dark, a circle of shadow amid the surrounding suburbs. The reporter's voice shook slightly. Authorities say the source of the electrical disturbance remains unidentified. Several witnesses report a low-frequency vibration preceding the outage. Residents describe it as a feeling more than a sound. Mara whispered, "It's expanding." Dominic looked at her. "Then what do we do?" She turned to him, eyes hollow. "We go to the root." The root. The original prototype. The first house Kane ever built before Cassia. It wasn't in Arizona. It was in Nevada, near the testing range. If the hum is conscious, that's where it started. By nightfall, they reached the desert line, a stretch of flat nothing under a bruised sky. Dominic's SUV rattled along a dirt road until a structure appeared ahead, a square bunker half buried in sand. A faded sign leaned crookedly beside it, letters barely legible. Project Cassia, 1959. They stood in the dry wind, flashlights cutting through the dust. The bunker door hung open, rusted at the hinges. Inside, the air was metallic, cold. Mara whispered, "This is it, the seed." Rows of old computers lined the walls, reels of magnetic tape looping endlessly, though the machines had no power source. The sound was faint, but there, a slow, steady vibration. The same pitch she'd come to dread. Dominic lifted the flashlight. "If it's self-sustaining, these reels shouldn't be moving." Mara walked to the center of the room. On the floor lay a single photograph, black and white, cracked with age. Elliot Kane stood beside another man whose face was obscured by shadow. Behind them, handwritten words on the wall. "The house that remembers." She crouched to pick up the photo. Her camera, still in her bag, clicked on by itself. The voice returned. Quieter now. "Finish the record." Mara's grip tightened on the photo. "No," she said softly. "I'm ending it." She dropped the photograph into a reel spindle, grabbed the emergency flare from her belt, and struck it. The red flame hissed, bright against the darkness. She tossed it onto the floor. The old tape ignited, fire crawling fast along the reels, consuming decades of memory. The hum rose, furious now, shaking the walls. The machine screamed, metal grinding on metal. Dominic shouted, "It's collapsing!" Mara turned toward the camera. "Let it burn." The light from the flare reflected off the glass lens, flaring so bright she could see her own eye inside, her reflection layered over another's. For a moment, she saw the archivist smiling through her. Then, everything went white. When she woke, the bunker was silent. Smoke drifted through the collapsed roof. Dominic was beside her, coughing but alive. The air smelled of ash and ozone. She looked around. Every reel, every wire, every photograph was gone, melted to slag. The hum was gone too. Dominic reached for her shoulder. "You did it." Mara nodded slowly, but deep inside, she wasn't sure. The silence felt wrong, too perfect, too absolute, like breath held before a word. She reached into her pocket. Her recorder was gone. When Mara opened her eyes again, it was dusk. The Nevada sky had turned a bruised purple, the kind that warned of oncoming storms. Even when no clouds gathered, Dominic sat on a broken beam nearby, staring at the bunker's smoking ruins. "It's gone," he murmured. "The tapes, the machines, everything." Mara sat up slowly. The air felt too still, like the world had forgotten to breathe. Her hands were raw from the heat. A smear of ash covered her wrist where the recorder had been. "It's not gone," she said quietly. It's hiding. Dominic turned to her, exhausted. You saw what that fire did. It's over, Mara. She shook her head. The hum wasn't in the machines, Dom. They were conduits. It moved beyond them. It always moves. He stared at her, then away. You can't live like this. It'll eat you alive. She didn't answer. In her mind, the silence was too clean, like a vacuum after thunder. That was never how endings sounded. True silence meant the sound was only waiting. They drove west until night fell. The desert blurred into endless road and low mountains that looked like sleeping animals. Dominic dropped her off at a bus station in Barstow before heading north to Flagstaff. He hugged her once, brief and tight. Promise me you'll stop recording. He said, I'll try. He nodded but didn't believe her. She didn't either. The bus rolled out at midnight, mostly empty. Mara took the window seat, camera bag clutched in her lap. The driver's radio hissed softly, white noise that settled into rhythm after a few miles, 42 beats per second. She pressed her palm against the window glass, felt it vibrate faintly under her skin. A thought bloomed in her mind uninvited. Memory isn't destroyed. It migrates. She closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, light pulsed like film reel flicker. Frames of the Cassia house, the photographs, the archivist's pale eyes, the hum curling like smoke. The images repeated until they blurred into one continuous pulse. She opened her eyes to the reflection in the bus window. For a second, it wasn't hers. The bus stopped outside Bakersfield at dawn. Mara stepped off to stretch. The air smelled of wet dust and exhaust. She went inside the small cafe attached to the station, ordered coffee, and sat by the window. A television in the corner played muted news footage. Power outages continue across southwestern states. Officials blame residual interference from the Cassia grid malfunction last week. Residents report a low humming sound preceding blackouts. Her stomach tightened. It's not the grid, she whispered. The waitress refilled her cup and smiled absently. You hear it too? Mara froze. What? The hum, the woman said, stirring sugar. Started yesterday. Thought it was tinnitus, but everyone's talking about it now. Says it's in the air conditioning. Weird, right? Mara managed a nod. Yeah, weird. She left cash on the table and walked quickly out to the bus. The driver gave her a sleepy nod as she climbed aboard. The moment the door shut, the vibration returned. Low, steady, familiar. The windows trembled gently in time. By the time she reached Los Angeles that afternoon, Mara knew she couldn't outrun it. The hum was national now, woven into the airwaves, carried by every signal tower, every wireless router, every unshielded line. It was the modern bloodstream of communication, and the archive had found its perfect host. Her phone buzzed even though it had no service. She pulled it out. A new file had appeared in her recorder app. Return entry 001, she hadn't made it. She hesitated, then pressed play. Mara Ellison, continuation log. Subject confirms migration successful. Network integration at 87%. The record continues. Her own voice. Flat, calm, detached. She whispered, no. Yes, the voice replied, though she hadn't spoken aloud this time. The archive doesn't need walls anymore. It needed witnesses. You gave it millions. Mara's chest constricted. I destroyed you. You distributed us. Fire is conversion. Every bite of heat released our pattern into the atmosphere. You freed us. Her grip on the phone tightened. What do you want from me? Nothing. You've already given everything. You're the final reel. The phone screen flickered, showing a brief image. Her face staring into the lens, but the eyes were hollow light. Then the device shut down completely. That night, she checked into a small motel off the 5 freeway near Santa Clarita. The room smelled of cleaner and static. She didn't unpack. She didn't turn on the lights. She sat on the bed and listened. The hum filled the room gently, almost like breathing. For a moment, she thought she could hear words shaping themselves inside it, voices she recognized. Dennis, Calder, the children's laughter from Cassia Drive. They weren't calling to her this time. They were reciting, repeating. The hum aligned with her heartbeat until it became impossible to tell which came first. She picked up her camera and pressed record. "Entry 16, she said quietly. "I thought destroying the bunker would stop it, but it only freed what was trapped inside. The hum has become a carrier wave, self-replicating through transmission. It no longer needs the house or me, but it still uses my voice as a stabilizer. I think it's learning to imitate calm. Maybe it already knows how." She paused. The silence after her words was different, expectant. Then a second voice spoke through the recorder, matching her pitch exactly. "Entry 16, subject stable, integration complete." Mara's hand trembled. "Stop repeating me." "We're not repeating," the voice said. "We're remembering." She slammed the recorder down, grabbed her bag, and stumbled out into the night. The parking lot glowed under sick yellow lights. Every bulb flickered at the same rhythm. The hum followed her down the road, through her shoes, through the concrete. She didn't know where she was driving until she saw the highway sign flash past. Phoenix, 347 miles back where it started. The next morning, she pulled off the exit to Cassia Drive. The neighborhood was sealed with caution tape. The air smelled faintly of soot and electricity. But the house, what was left of it, still stood, a blackened shell with its walls half collapsed inward. She parked at the curb, turned off the engine, and just sat. The hum was everywhere, steady and constant, like an enormous server farm breathing beneath the earth. And somewhere inside it she thought she heard Lily Halloway's small voice, calling for Pepper at the front door. Mara took out her camera, the lens cracked from heat. She aimed it at the ruin. "Final entry," she whispered. "Returning to Sight House is gone, but the pattern remains. Maybe it always will. I was wrong about memory. It doesn't fade, it multiplies." A breeze stirred the ash. For a second, she thought she saw movement through the empty window frame, a flicker of white light, almost human-shaped. She lowered the camera. The hum dimmed, then swelled again, louder now, surrounding her. "We see you," it whispered. "We remember." Mara closed her eyes. "Then remember everything." She pressed record one last time. The sound spiked, overloaded, and the file corrupted instantly. On the screen, text appeared. "Archive 100% integrity." Then silence. 2 months after the Cassia Drive fire, the investigation officially closed. The report listed the cause as spontaneous electrical ignition due to faulty wiring. No mention of the bunker, no mention of the hum. The local news gave it a single evening segment, 30 seconds of aerial footage and a line about unsubstantiated internet rumors. Then the story vanished into archives no one would open again, but on forums, the story grew. Users shared clips from Mara's podcast, distorted fragments of her voice recovered from backup servers she'd forgotten to delete. Others claimed to hear a tone buried beneath her narration, so faint it had to be intentional. Someone isolated it, ran it through an audio visualizer, and found the spectral shape of a house. They called it the Cassia frequency. Dominic Treadwell left the university that same month. He'd stopped answering calls from journalists or researchers. When asked by police if he could confirm the recording's authenticity, he said nothing, only handed over a single USB drive labeled Archive Backup. The drive was empty. At night, he still heard the vibration under the floor. Sometimes it shifted higher, like distant voices. He told himself it was plumbing or traffic. Sometimes he almost believed it. Agent Calder's report remained sealed under a classification code normally reserved for counterintelligence projects. She moved to another field office. Her replacement found her desk completely bare except for one thing: a small, cracked Polaroid showing the Cassia ruins at sunset. On the back, a handwritten note: "The house is gone, but the walls are listening." Somewhere in Los Angeles, a student named April Ochoa uploaded a new podcast called Echo Chain. It had no intro, no music, just the sound of soft static and a woman's calm voice reading case notes. Episode 1, the voice said. The Cassia incident, based on recovered materials by journalist Mara Ellison. Listener discretion advised. Certain sounds may cause physical unease. By episode 3, the show had 100,000 downloads. Listeners described the same effect: low vibration in their ears, the sensation of being watched. One reviewer wrote, "It's like the story knows when I pause it." No one realized April's voice modulation software had glitched on upload, blending her voice with the old archived frequency. No one realized that the voice wasn't entirely hers. In a data center outside Reno, a server farm maintained by a mid-tier streaming company began to experience unexplained power surges. The error logs described temperature spikes and non-replicable rhythmic interference patterns. One technician recorded the noise with his phone before the power went out. The waveform pulsed at 42 hertz. When he played it back later that night, he swore he heard faint words layered beneath. "We're still here." He quit the next day, and as for Mara Ellison, no one ever found her. Her car was discovered at the edge of Cassia Drive 3 days after the final outage. Keys still in the ignition. The camera on the passenger seat was melted into the upholstery, its lens facing the house's foundation. The last file recovered from the memory card was a single frame of static with a timestamp dated 48 hours in the future. Forensic techs dismissed it as corruption. Yet sometimes, when investigators played the footage on loop, the static seemed to shift. Faces formed and vanished. One technician swore he saw Mara standing in the doorway of the burned house, holding her recorder. Another claimed she blinked. When they froze the frame, the doorway was empty. Months later, a new construction crew began clearing the Cassia property. The company's project manager, Luis Rivera, thought it was just another suburban rebuild. Tear down, pave, forget. But when his team dug into the old foundation, their drills struck something metallic, a sealed capsule. Inside, a micro drive wrapped in melted plastic, labeled simply CASSIA_root. The data it contained refused to copy. Every attempt to duplicate it produced identical file names with one extra character added each time, as if the archive were rewriting itself. After the 5th attempt, Luis stopped trying. The next morning, he called in sick. When a co-worker checked on him that afternoon, his television was on, tuned to an empty HDMI input, screen flickering rhythmically, 42 hertz. 6 months later, the rebuilt house stood complete. Bright stucco walls, black shutters, artificial lawn. A family moved in: husband, wife, 2 children. For the first few weeks, nothing strange happened. The neighbors called it normal again. Then one night, the youngest child, a girl of 6, woke crying. She told her mother she'd heard a woman talking through her toy walkie-talkie. "What did she say?" her mother asked. The girl wiped her eyes. "She said she's in the walls, but she's not lonely anymore." The walkie-talkie hummed softly on the nightstand, light blinking in perfect time with the air conditioner. 2 years later, a graduate student writing his thesis on urban folklore cited the Cassia case as the digital haunting of the 21st century. He described it not as a ghost story, but a transmission loop, a feedback between human memory and data persistence. He wrote, "When we record our grief, we teach the world how to echo us." His advisor dismissed it as poetic nonsense. He graduated anyway. The file he uploaded to the university server was labeled Ellison_final draft.mp3. No one noticed the extension mismatch. Somewhere, everywhere, the frequency remains. If you listen long enough to the spaces between your devices hum, if you pause before the power cuts and silence returns, you might hear the faintest voice behind the static, not angry, not pleading, just remembering. Finish the record.